Welcome to Science Minds. I'm very pleased to have with us today Camille Proctor, who's the founder and executive director of the Color of Autism. I'd like to just sort of rewind and hear a little bit about sort of where the Color of Autism came from, sort of your motivation for creating this organization, and just a little bit of your background there.
Sure. So in 2006, I had my son Ari. And, for the first year of Ari's life, things seemed pretty normal. And what I mean by normal is like the developmental markers. But one thing that I noticed when he was 12 months is that he wasn't walking. And he wasn't walking at 13 months. And then I noticed that he didn't point at anything. And then I noticed that at 14 months, he still wasn't walking. And I became concerned. Somewhere around when he was 14 months, he did start to walk, but I would take him to doctors, and I would say, I think something's wrong. He flaps his hands a lot, and he looks at fans. He had an obsession with fans and turning things on and off. This little Fisher-Price house, and he had light switches, and he would click, 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 turn them on and off. Yeah. And so every time I'd take him to a doctor, they'd say he was delayed. That's all I ever got. Delay. As time progressed, I became more and more concerned that maybe he was autistic. But I kept being dismissed because he makes eye contact. He made a lot of eye contact. No one noticed that he only made eye contact with women. So I spent about a year trying just to get a diagnosis. So when he was 2, I finally got a diagnosis, but it was only after I went to a genetic doctor who did a test and said he had 47 instead of 46 chromosomes, gray area. Typically, people like that are autistic. And then I got a diagnosis from a developmental ped. So, like any parent, you're trying to find a tribe. You're trying to find people that have resources that can help you with this kid that doesn't talk, that's having these meltdowns and doing all of these things that are just inconvenient to you, because that's how you look at it. It's just like things shouldn't be like this, right? And so I'd go to support groups. No one looked like me. There's no black people in these support groups. I would be the minority, and no one really understood some of the things that I was going through as a black woman, and trying to raise a black kid, a black boy especially. And so I'd ask questions like, what's going to happen when he becomes a teenager? And they always think that black kids are menacing. And if he gets away from me and he can't talk or identify himself or even understand what it means to yield, like if the police said yield, he could get killed. And they're like, no, that would never happen. So I knew I had a problem. I knew I didn't have anyone that understood me. And I knew that something needed to change. What I didn't know is that I was taking on something that even myself I hadn't processed through. I just knew someone needed to make a difference. And then I started on this journey to get black families into early intervention programs, because I was also finding when I go out into the communities, you see all these children and you would hear these little high-pitched shrieks, and you knew what it was. The parents didn't know what it was. So they'd be hitting kids and stop that, you did. And so I know that had to end, and that we needed to get these kids into diagnostic services. So for example, at the time, I was lucky that my son Ari got diagnosed at 2. Black children on average were 4 and school age. Right. And still that number hasn't really, we've taken a bite out of it a little bit, but still I got parents coming to me this day. My child's 12 and got diagnosed last year. Right. So that's kind of scary.
What was your background prior to Color of Autism, and even maybe prior to your son being born?
So it's funny, I've worked in marketing. I've had a lot of different jobs. I've worked in television, music, marketing, and even compliance, which is funny. So I've worked in a lot of different things. Jack of all trades, master of none. But I had an interesting career, and so one of the downsides of me being me is that when my son was diagnosed, I had a great career. I had a 6-figure career that I had to walk completely away from because no one wanted to take care of a child that doesn't talk. Yeah. So not having the access to the services that I needed, I had to empty out my 401k, my retirement, so I could take care of him. And that was another reason what kind of led me to doing what I do, because it shouldn't be that difficult for any family.
Do you feel like early on, especially like with Ari or with the Color of Autism, can you think of some just allies that came through, or that you like crossed paths with, that you feel like helped, or maybe even the opposite, some barriers? Or
So I'm going to tell you about the barriers. So because I don't really feel that unfortunately I didn't really get allyship until something bad happened, and that bad happened was George Floyd.
okay.
Then everyone wanted to be an ally, but before then everyone thought that they could take on communities that are effectively siloed. And so, unfortunately, people thought, well, we can address that. We'll just take that one black person that we have from the department and bring them over here to talk to these people. Or this one Latina to talk to these people. Now, they don't know if that Latina is from Mexico or from the South Bronx.
Right.
They just know she speaks Spanish. And they don't know that it's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't get that, because everyone would say, well, why do you need something separate? It's not separate. So I always use the example of my big fat Greek wedding. A Greek family, and the dad sprayed Windex on everything. Everything. That's a cultural thing. So everyone, no matter who they are or what color they are, if you're from a different culture, your culture is just different. And in order to end a disparity, for me, it was important that where I came from, the people that looked like me understood that they needed to take action. Not take action to fight against something, but to take action so that their children are comfortable in who they are, and that their children had a sense of belonging in this world. So that's what was important for me. And then that people got access to early intervention services, because they do work.
What do you feel like most proud of? If you can like pinpoint, I mean, your organization is broad and sweeping and growing, but what do you like kind of look back on and say, you know, this is like an achieving moment, or something that I'm really proud of accomplishing?
Sure. So one of the things I'm really proud of is the fact that we have a 5-week training that parents from all over America can log in on Zoom, and they can learn about therapeutic processes. They can ask the questions, the important questions. I'm introducing parents to practitioners that look like them. And so we're breaking down the barrier of them going to a practitioner that doesn't look like them, and they ask a question. So what is your son every day? Does your son ever have outbursts? Oh no, he never has any outbursts. Well, now he has these outbursts and I don't know how to stop it, or he does this and I don't know how to stop it. They're not doing this anymore. And now they're like, okay. And so I'm proud of this program, because we've trained close to 600 parents across the United States. And so whether they all agree or disagree, I know that what we've done has made a difference, because I'm getting the feedback from parents, and we're seeing successes with these parents. So to me, that's a big deal. And that's all I really wanted to do, was just help help autistic people have a better community, a sense of selves too. So, which kind of leads me to, I try to get parents, like I said, to accept their children. That's hard, because you focus on what's so darn inconvenient for you. Like, it was really inconvenient for Ari to do some of the stuff he did. It was inconvenient to me. I didn't like it, but I didn't understand why he did it. And so once I let go of what I wanted, and I started to focus on, hey, what do you want? And you can even do that with a small kid. You know, he doesn't have to be as old as Ari was when I figured out to get my life together. But what do you want? What do you need? How do you feel about this? I think that when parents start to do that, they can be better allies to their kids, right?
I'm interested in sort of this idea that you brought up about sort of siloed communities. And, you know, one of the things that I've heard you speak about, and that's really impressive, is, you know, just your cultural responsivity, right? And I feel at least from the outside, it seems like you've sort of become an umbrella for a lot of displaced and marginalized communities outside of what you may have originally sort of seen it as.
Yeah.
And I'm just interested in sort of what you see as like the challenges of expanding your umbrella, as well as the benefits maybe of that expansion as well.
So I think one of the challenges, and I'll be totally transparent about this, it's not that I don't want to expand my umbrella, but I would like for people who are part of these communities to lead. I don't want to be their leader. I can help them with the blueprint. I can say, hey, this is how I did it.
Yeah.
And you can take this and turn it into what you need in your community. There are some organizations that are actually, well, one I know of, there's a really good organization, and they're helping the Muslim community. They're doing a perfect, exceptional job, and they're across the country. But, I mean, I think for me, I am a leader, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I know how it felt for me when I started off my nonprofit, and I would write grants, and people would say, oh, well, ABC, they do this. And I go, but they're not responsive to us. Oh, but they're in the black community. That's just a pamphlet that has a black person on it.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's not help. Who is that helping?
Yeah.
Right? It's not helping me, because no one knows. I say this, you have to know, like, what a Lola is, a abuelito, a abuela. You need to know what this is. You need to know what a baba is. Baba is dad. You need to know these things. And if you don't have any idea of what these things are, you don't need to be trying to have these heart-to-heart conversations if you don't respect someone's culture.
Right.
And so for me, it's a lot easier to really take people who are part of these communities and have them organically lead and make it culturally responsive, because they're the leaders, not me. I'm just a person who's like over here, and I got bits and pieces of information of different cultures.
I'd like to sort of shift the view a little bit into this sort of how your work intersects with researchers, right? I mean, this podcast, the Distinguished Lecture Series, we usually bring on people in the academic sphere, but obviously I think that your perspective is extremely valuable and critical to like what researchers do. There's obviously significant room for growth in those arenas for us and for what we do, and I just appreciate you sharing kind of some of your message about what we can do and how we can improve in areas of being culturally responsive, reaching out to communities that are disproportionately not included in research.
Right, and so, and I think one of the biggest hurdles is that you have to reach those people, but they have to understand why. Why is it important for you to know about my community? And that's always a tough one. And so without the numbers, you can't get the resources. So if you don't exist, no one's going to put any money towards your community or fixing a problem. If you don't exist, no one's going to put any money towards creating a resource center in your area. Yeah. There's unfortunately, funding comes with numbers. And so you have to exist in order for it to be a problem. Now, how do you overcome the obstacle of getting their participation and involvement after you've explained to them why? I think that researchers make the biggest mistake, especially, and I say this all the time, with their funding. Meaning, you guys write these RFPs but you don't include people from the communities that you're trying to research. And that's a big problem, because when you don't come to an organization like mine, for example, you're missing out on opportunities to have meaningful connections. But what happens is people come to us after they've written the RFP and to the NIH, and then all of a sudden it's like, hi, can you help us? No, I'm not helping you recruit anybody. And it's like, why? Because I got stuff to do. And part of my stuff to do does not include recruiting families for you. And I think that this is where research misses the mark every time. They're after the fact, and they don't look at the humanality of the subjects that they're having to study. What I mean by that is, what's in it for me? Like, why would I want to be part of a study? Okay, sir, you told me you're going to take my saliva, you're going to run it through something, and da-da-da-da-da. What is in it for me? Because right now, this one over here, he's the autistic one. This one over here has football, and this one over here, I don't even know what he needs. And I got 2 jobs. What's in it for me?
Right.
And so you have to start creating a what's in it, a buy-in. What is their buy-in? Like, what are they going to get from it? And you have to think in regards to what is tangible to that community, right? So what's tangible to a community is having parents as advocates and allies, having parents, equipping the parents with something that they can use, which is a tangible, to support their child or their loved one. Because just think about it, we're in California, so you have the regional centers, right? Now, I don't know a lot other than they exist, but what I do know is that across the country, we have wait lists. And our parents wait depending on where they're located. And 12 months is a short time, right? So what do you do in that year that you're on a wait list? Do you do nothing? Or do you work on skills that you may have learned from a training?
Thinking more, you've started engaging in more sort of collaborative research partnerships, and thinking about being intentional about those partnerships. What do you feel like you're able to advocate for or promote for the people you serve through joining in these kinds of partnerships?
So, again, when, with these partnerships where we're collaborating with researchers and providing the supports that their subjects, because that's what they are, their subjects need, we're also helping these communities get the numbers that they need to cost justify the services and the supports they need. Because if you have a tangible number, if you can say, and I'm just making this part up, that this section of Sacramento is more affected because this number of people are affected by this or impacted by this, you can get money to set up a center right there, as opposed to having them going across town. And so you're giving them the what's in it for them. We've given you skills, we've given you support, and now we're about to give you a center in your community. I'll give you an example. I'm from Detroit, and Detroit is a motor city, so we never focused on public transportation. So, funny thing about that, a lot of people don't have vehicles in Detroit. A lot of my parents can't even get to therapy. They got nothing. Can't even catch a bus because that runs every hour.
Gotcha, yeah.
So that's a problem. And there's only one behavioral center in the city proper. The rest are in the suburbs.
Right.
So that's a problem. But, with numbers, intangible things that you can take to government and say, you need one over there. So that's why research is important, because you do need somebody to kind of give an assessment of the ebb and flow of things and the why and what are some of the solutions, but also how can we make a better quality of life for individuals. So that's what people don't understand, that research is, I don't know the word, but it's many things, right? It's not necessarily researching how to cure something. Sometimes it's just taking the data and trying to figure out, well, how many people does this impact and what can we do about it? Or how can we improve, like I said, improve someone's life? But no one ever takes the time to really explain that to the people that you're trying to engage. So I think that's another way that research sort of fails, because you come to a minority person and you say research, and they just go Henrietta Lacks, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they don't even know that research is just having a series of conversations.
Yeah.
They don't even know that. They just automatically think you're going to draw blood, spit, or something, and then it's going to be given off to some, I don't know, dark web organization that's going to do something crazy to them. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. But the suspicion is warranted just because of the history. Right?
Definitely.
So I'm making a joke of it, but it's because of the history, though.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. What are you optimistic about looking into the future?
So I'm really optimistic about the future of how autistic people are treated and revered. Because I think, you know how you always hear somebody should get their flowers? I think the autistic community should get their flowers, because I think that they've been so integral in creating the world that we live in, but everyone's tried to hide them. So I'm optimistic about people being themselves and being unmasked and having a community that's supporting everybody, you know? And so I don't look to create like something just for autistic people. I'm looking forward to when someone builds a building, for them to say, oh, there may be somebody with a sensory sensitivity to something, or just to have consideration. And I'm looking forward to everyone being at the table, and that's starting to happen. And I think it's starting to happen because they have obnoxious people like me who won't shut up and say, and I just bring my own damn chair and I'm at the table.
Yeah.
You know, that's just me. And I think it's important, because if they won't give you a seat, bring your own chair. I walk around with a folding, we were having a conversation about how my mother could not cook. She couldn't, she sucked at it. So I had a friend who had a family of 11 kids.
Okay.
And I had a bike, and I would put a folding chair on the back of my banana seat, and I'd ride over to her house so I could eat dinner, because it wasn't happening at my house unless my dad cooked. You take your own chair.
Yeah.
Take your own chair and be there and be a voice. And I think that's more important. And I don't think that it should take something like someone getting murdered like George Floyd for people to say that diversity is important, because diversity has always been important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really love that metaphor, and it's really powerful. And I think we spoke earlier about parents who feel desperate or despair, and having some, people like you in the world who are giving people hope. Really, it's a hopeful message, and what you're doing is so inspirational. And I know in the academic community and the research community, I think that we have a lot to learn from you, and to translate your message into that same kind of advocacy.
I think you can do better, but like I said, you have to be intentional on the framework in the context of these programs, these grants, and your research. You have to be intentional, because if you're not, you're going to keep getting the same result. I mean, you honestly, I was listening to some researchers, and they were talking about how this was a great number. 96% of the whatever's research kits were abandoned. 96, but 4% were turned in. Those are great. No, that's not great. Who said that's great numbers?
Uh-huh.
That means you're not engaging people. That means people is something is difficult about the follow-through process. And I don't know everything about research, right? But I do know that there's processes, and you're asking people to do stuff. And if 96% of the people are abandoning whatever it is you're asking them to do, it's not successful. So I think that it's important not to take everything as a win and to say, we sucked at this, how can we do it better? But they were patting themselves on the back like they'd really done something with that 4%. I'm like, can anybody do math? I thought I was the one that sucked at math. Clearly these people don't know how to do math. So that's what I really say to the research community. You do better, but do better by the engagement first. Because if you engage, first and combine that with the special interest or what it is you want to study, I think that you are writing a more powerful grant, but a more powerful program, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like that, the idea of the engagement first perspective.
Yeah.
Because it flips everything on its head.
Right.
Again, just thank you so much for chatting, and we just absolutely appreciate you coming here.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was founded in 1998 with the promise to reduce and prevent the disabilities that can be associated with autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions. Every day, our clinicians and researchers make progress on that promise. Our groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other conditions associated with disability are helping affected individuals achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website or our social media platforms to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.